This gathering has been a long time coming. And of course, many of you who are here this weekend have been working with the most incredible determination over years and over decades. I don't know, but this may very well be the first time that so many of us have gathered together to figure out how to organize a national, sustained anti-prison campaign. Anti-prison campaign.
It's been a long time. It's been coming. It's been a long time. It's been here. We got no jobs, no schools, no future. There ain't much happening here. It was a long time coming. Gonna be a long time here.
We want to talk this weekend about radical strategies. About radical strategies. Strategies that help our sisters and brothers who are inside, that help to alleviate the misery and the pain, and at the same time move toward the abolition of prisons as the only attempt to solve the major social problems of our time.
It's been a long time, been a long time here. It was a long time coming, gonna be a long time here.
Yeah, it's about time. It's about time.
When we started organizing and we started inviting people, some people said that we would only be preaching to the choir. So I think the first thing that I need to say, choir,
Yes, we're all in the choir.
is that somebody needs to preach to the choir, because we all been singing a different song.
Early one morning, I wanna go outside. Oh, well, I saw my mama in a dream last night. I wanna go outside. Oh, well, she said, Lord, her son was a free man. I wanna go outside. Oh, well, she asked the governor for my freedom. I wanna go outside. Oh, well, I said, Lord, I must be dreaming. I wanna go outside. They told a dirty lie.
In this short lifetime, we have went from having a handful of prisoners to over 1 million. Choir, we need to start singing together. In this lifetime, we went through having over 10,000 women prisoners to over 150,000 women prisoners. Choir, somebody need to preach.
Amen.
In a place like Texas, they seem to kill people on the average about 2 a month. Do you hear me, choir?
Oh, well, I wanna go outside. Oh, well.
When I was a child growing up in California in the 1950s, this is what the California dream was made out of. This is the substance of it. You know, great dams, new highways, schools, hospitals everywhere. And for a lot of Californians, and not all, unionized good jobs. Now I look at concrete, and it seems like something rather sinister. There's too much of the stink of claustrophobia and human oppression and slavery about it. And you can't go anywhere in California these days, in rural California, in the deserts, the cotton fields, or even in the redwoods, without seeing the gray prison walls looming up on the horizon. And they really look like warehouses. And when I was doing a story for The Nation magazine, one of the administrators turned to me and said, yeah, warehouses. He says, what we actually are, and he said it with his sneer, we're human landfills. Penologists don't talk anymore about rehabilitation. But they also don't talk about punishment anymore. The key word is immobilizing strategic age cohorts. In other words, warehousing Americans whose ancestors for 400 years labored to build this country in the cotton fields and the factories, but because their labor is no longer necessary to the economy, we warehouse them instead.
And so the ruling class builds more and more jails, the one true affordable housing policy in our country. The United States has the highest incarceration rate of all industrialized nations, a third higher than South Africa under apartheid, and 5 times higher than the rate of Western European countries. And it is African Americans and Latinos who disproportionately make up 60% of the inmate population. Who aren't in the prisons? The rich, the sons of Republican presidents who embezzled hundreds of millions of dollars from savings and loan pension funds. CEOs of oil giants who spill millions of tons of oil into the ocean, who pour toxic pollutants into the air, whose deadly toxic plant fires kill hundreds of countries like India and Bangladesh. Whose crime? Who's the criminal?
Real security is not locking up more and more people. That's not what real security is. Real security is knowing that you will have shelter, that you will have food, that you will have beauty in your life, that you have a future, that your family has a future. That's what security is.
Mumia is on death row. Mumia is given the death sentence even though he had no prior criminal record. The facts around this case are still in question. His right to due process denied. Mumia is given the death sentence because he was a former Black Panther, because he exposed police brutality and the terrorist bombing against the MOVE organization, because Mumia has always told the truth about injustice, exploitation, oppression. They charge the white supremacist, patriarchal, monopoly capitalist, ruling class as the real criminal for its crimes against the world. Who's the criminal? What's the crime?
America's prisons are becoming America's concentration camps. And there is no doubt that when you look at America's prisons and you look at the fact that there are 1.5 million people in America's prisons and 65 to 70% are people of color and young people of color. And when you look on the other side and you see this bell curve and there are 1.5 million people in higher education, but 80% are white, there's something really wrong.
I'm really impressed, I'm really inspired on behalf of all of the comrades that are left behind those walls. I know they will stand proud to know that all of this brain power, all of this energy, in spite of the little petty differences that we can't let stop our progress, has come together. Come together to brainstorm and to come up with solutions to tear those walls down, to make it very difficult for them to continue to imprison our sons and daughters, our comrades, and to continue on into the next millennium as free and independent people who have a right to struggle and have a right not to be incarcerated and condemned because of that struggle.
Where we sat down, there we went, when we remember Zion.
We better do something, all of us together. We better find some way that we're going to do something all together. 2 million people in prison today, and they're not building them penitentiaries to be nice places. No country clubs. And we all know that. This is the reality, man. It's hard, the time's getting harder, and the time is getting longer. Free all political prisoners. Free Leonard Peltier.
Carried us away into captivity, required Babylon, where we sat down. There we went when we remembered Zion.
We are in prison, really. We are living, this society is a type of a prison in which a few control, and tell us what to do. But as long as they are in that prison, as long as Mumia is in that prison, as long as the 16 Puerto Ricans are in prison, as long as black brothers and sisters are in prison, as long as Marilyn Box is in prison, as long as Herman Bell is in prison, you and me are in prison. So we're fighting for it.
So let the words of our mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in thy sight here tonight.
Critical resistance actively supports the unconditional release of Mumia Abu-Jamal. Or at the very least, a new trial and amnesty for and the unconditional release of all political prisoners and prisoners of war. This is what we all have come together.
It is necessary for you to do something, for you to be involved, for you to take some responsibility, not for me, not for any political prisoner, but for yourself, for your family, for your babies.
So let the words of our mouths and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in thy sight here tonight.
Oh, hey. Hey, little man. Is that you? Yeah, this is Dad. You ain't nothing but a peanut head. Yes, you are. You a peanut head. You ain't. Okay, son. Yeah, this is Daddy. You just calm down and listen for a minute, okay? And listen. Hey, I got a song I want to sing for you. You listening? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday.
Have I ever told anyone here how almost every prisoner I've ever known has told me when I asked him that he's coming home in a minute? 1 minute. Not 10 minutes, not 15, but 1 minute. Even the brothers I know who are doing 30 years with life on the back, when you coming home, Pa, I'll ask, I'm gonna be home in a minute, baby girl. He's gonna say to me and mean it. And I'll look into his face, wet with sincerity, and think, all right. And as though he could read my doubts, the brother would inevitably and with considerable passion add, you gonna see, girl, I'm gonna be home in a minute. And okay, I'd agree. I agreed because I had faith. I wouldn't have been in that prison for a single second if I didn't have faith in my husband. I took his hand in my hand. I looked at him directly and I said, all right, you win. I believe you. I gave in to his arguments. Have I said that? I gave in of my own free will. I gave in and all the while knew I was ignoring the voices inside myself that
warned me to keep my defenses up. The voices that admonished me to balance faith with reality, I ignored them at every turn. I listened to my husband and I became a believer. I did that. Have I ever said how often someone will look at me all flushed with concern, place their hand on my shoulder, wrinkle their brow, and ask in a whisper, "So, Asha, when is Rashid coming home anyway? How much longer do you all have to go?" "Oh, he's coming home in a minute," I say to them. "He's going to be home in just 1 minute," I say. And then I disappear inside myself. I disappear inside my prayers. I concentrate, I meditate, I summon up faith for 100 women, maybe even more, and I begin to pray. But I don't pray to just any God. I pray to every God I've ever heard of. I call out whatever name. I call out whatever name and whatever manner of worship. I am loud and I speak in tongues. I am soft and I whisper just below my breath. I sob and I am stoic. But no matter how I go to meet God, two things never change. Every time I go, I always go begging, and I go ready to deal like this: sweet Jesus, Mary, Joseph, Peter, Paul, Allah, Jah, Yamara, Ra, Obatala, Booty, Kali, my old great spirit. You whose name cannot be known or spoken. Look, can you see me, arms out, reaching into the four winds? Jesus, I am here, genuflecting at the altar, swallowing bread and wine. Allah, I'm facing the Kaaba on my knees, my forehead to the ground. Can you see me, oh Batala? Yamaya. Alegba, I'm standing at the crossroads in need of direction, a signpost, a tiny clue, tear a piece off a map. Where am I? Am I close? Am I far? Am I hot? Am I cold? Can you see me? Who can see me? Can you hear me? Who can hear me? Who's willing to come bargain with the prisoner's wife?
California system now has mushroomed really beyond what any of us ever imagined it could. From 1852, when the state was established, to 1984, 12 prisons were built in California. So that's 130 plus years. Just since 1984, 21 additional prisons have been built. And the Department of Corrections estimates that in order to imprison the 276,000 people that 3 strikes will require to be imprisoned, about tripling the current prison population, they'll need to build 70 to 80 more prisons on top of the 33 that they currently have.
Guerrillero me llaman, oye, justicia reclaman mis abuelos y abuelas en mis venas lloran. ¿Qué pasará con la rumba de todos los días a que zumba? Subiendo y bajando como la historia. Llegamos con la memoria de Antillana, la brisa de resistencia, la confederacia de los de Quimbamba.
For one 3-striker to be kept in for the minimum sentence, which is about 21 years that Vincent spoke about a little earlier, it costs $486,000 to keep him in, just for one.
Who wrote this Constitution? And do we know the meaning of the Constitution, my brother? What does the Constitution constitute to you? To me, black man wasn't written for you or the brother who was born to rule or other. It started in the streets. Not in institutions, not in hospitals, bug houses, and beat-up squads, where a heavy shadow of death hangs over a prison yard. Attica, yes, I will take her away from any institution to the stagnate waves of revolution and complete eternal change.
But for that $486,000, we'd be able to pay 121 UC tuitions or 243 CSU tuitions. And I think that's a pretty stiff, eye-opening number, especially when people are being put away for a slice of pizza, you know?
We have to understand that prison is one of their main weapons. And education is one of our main weapons. And they understand that very clearly. We need to understand that. They made a conscious decision. It wasn't just a question of getting rid of ethnic studies, getting rid of open admissions, getting rid of affirmative action. They're marching right along. Their approach was far more radical than that. They decided to destroy the public education system from the bottom to the top. This is the destruction of public education.
The false perception is crime rates are going up. crime rates are as low today than they have been in decades. But the reporting of crime on nightly news is the highest it's ever been at any time in the history of this country. And so you get reported crime, but actual crime's not going on. But if they're reporting crime, we must build new prisons. We have to fill those beds. And now they're privatizing prisons so that you can literally go buy stock in a prison.
I just got out of prison Wednesday. They have us doing telemarketing for insurance companies. You see what I'm saying? Jobs that we should be giving some people in the community, and even just a minimum wage, they have them doing telemarketing for $20 a month.
Now, if you own stock, you want that company to do good. And a prison does good by filling those beds, by getting those inmates working. And so they're selling stock they're selling prisons on the market. They're creating slaves once again in America.
Because I told them, prison guards, the migrants, the cops, the pigs. So no anymore.
Stop. Put your hands on your head. You can help me. Now I'm being full of land. No camera to document the first strike. Beway. Now I violate your age right. Let's a human track you like a fucking dog. Corrupt the system. Guess who's the boss? Hog American. I'm at the top of the food chain. Scared again. Beat you down for the pain. I own the key. Now you're feeling my power. Smile with the light. Now I see you screaming cower. I'm a god living free in my own land. Taking advantage of my badge because I know I can. Come on.
Our youth are characterized every day to us as violent predators. They are described by academics like John DiIulio at Princeton as remorseless, pre-feral beings, as super predators. Every night on the evening news, we are deluged with stories characterizing our children as violent, as animals, as wolves, as remorseless, as diseases, as plagues, as viruses. And we know that underneath that characterization of children is clear racial coding, understood by everyone in America. If we talked about other groups in society at this moment, at the end of the 90s, at the end of this decade, with the language that we allow to talk about our youth and our children, there would be an uproar. We cannot allow our children to be demonized and criminalized. And we must stand together and reject this terrible characterization of our children.
We are demanding education, not incarceration. We are demanding true knowledge of our cultures and our history. We are tired of being attacked. We are demanding freedom from mental and physical lockdown. We've been here for 3 days at this conference. Okay, we've been strategizing, we've been learning, but if we don't take advantage of everyone we've met here and all the things we've learned here, then we haven't done our job, and this conference was for nothing.
Freedom, ladies and gentlemen. For the first time in my life, I honestly feel like my daughter will see freedom. I feel like the prisons will be shut down and the YA doors will open. In these last 3 days, I've also saw a lot of pain. I've also seen young women and young men tell their stories of degradation. But you know what? Let's fuck them up with our education.
I'm that sister in the alley. But don't hate me for being all that. Don't be mad, babe, cause I'm running this. And I probably uphold the title of one bad sister.
This organizing that has gone on for the last 3 days is amazing. Let's close the walls of racism, because you know what? We cannot bow down. The degradation, the criminalization, the privatization the incarceration must cease.
They don't care even about a million man, million woman, million youth march. You can get 10 million people out there one day. One day. They don't care about that. They can deal with that. But it's the ongoing work that's a threat to this system. It's people every day working for their freedom, making it clear that our freedom is important to us and that we ain't gonna sit back and watch these prisons build faster than we can blink an eye and be filled just as fast. We ain't gonna have it. That's the message we gotta send.
It's beautiful, Sister Angela, you know, Professor Davis. It's beautiful. We talked about courage and determination. We have to have courage and determination. We have to be fearless. We have to be ignorant of defeat. We have to be ready to put things on the line, because you did it for us and you're still doing it, you know? But I feel like those people in here, it's time we build this alliance. We make this stuff strong. We come and get in their face and put something on the line, you know? We need to
The most important thing is that we network with each other, because my problem in New York State is your problem. Your problem in California is in Europe. It's everywhere. It's not just in one place. It's just fortunately and luckily we can see ourselves together in Berkeley, California today.
It's pretty easy to come to a conference, beautiful conference, and sit down and clap for what is being said, but it's another thing to get up tomorrow and say, I'm going to make a change myself to see that this prison industrial complex comes down.
Hey, yo! Hey, yo! Oh, yo! Oh, say, can't you see? By the dawn's early light, that all children were created equal as the morning of the lights. No child to be inferior. No child to be superior. All the child to be beautiful decorations like our gardens of our earth. Hallelujah. Amen. Hallelujah. Amen. Hallelujah.
we found you guilty.
They locking brothers in the poorhouse who can't afford more house. Politicians nervous, it's the only free service they provide. You wanna go inside, there's a hot meal. We can score you a deal, we can score you on a bed for a night or 2 or 3 or 4 months.
People are becoming aware that one of our boom industries in the United States is the prison industry.
Over the last couple of decades, prison spending has jumped from $2.3 billion to $31.2 billion.
We're gone from corrections to collections. All we do is collect the inmates, get money from their labor. Now when you're making a call to a phone company, you think you're talking to the phone company, you're talking to an inmate.
And we have to ask ourselves, what kind of nation do we want to be, and how unacceptable, how morally repugnant our policy choices have become.
If you want to understand the quality of life of a society, look inside its prison.
It is no mystery who these prisons are being built for, who is so-called profiting from them. It's very clear.
The prison industrial complex, the heart of it to me is actually the warehousing of human beings.
They say they locking us up in cells to protect us from ourselves. It smell like they got another plan in storehouse, or should I say warehouse, full of niggas and other misfits that could.
They're oppressing us just because we're poor, we're disenfranchised,
justice,
and we ain't got shit.
And it's a crime to be broke in America. It's a crime.
While public housing has fallen to the ground and funding for social services and education has been drastically cut in the past 20 years, there is one sector that is receiving enormous U.S. government support and funding.
The prison industrial complex is a term that refers to the exponential expansion of prisons and jails and the rising numbers of men and women prisoners from communities of color. And second, the increasingly symbiotic relationship between private corporations and the prison industry.
Thank you.
Which means that private corporations literally feed the punishment industry, and that the punishment industry yields enormous profits for private corporations.
Since the early 1980s, we at Wackenhut have been helping to shape what is now called privatized corrections through the development of modern, cost-efficient facilities.
And not just private prison corporations, not just the Corrections Corporation of America, not just Wackenhut, but TWA, right, and IBM as well.
Where do some of America's most successful people get their start? Did somebody say McDonald's?
Dell pioneered this direct way. They aren't selling me a box. They're selling a smarter way.
Be direct. Dell. Dell workstations use Intel Pentium 3 processors.
Wear Body by Victoria, and all you'll see is curves. Body by Victoria, seamless, and only at Victoria's Secret.
Number 3, the reliance of many communities upon what is so euphemistically called corrections for economic vitality, particularly in the aftermath of corporate migration to the third world.
There are town council members, there are mayors, there are board of supervisor members, you name the politician, and they are there at the legislature begging for a prison to be located in their community. And why? When the copper mine closes down, we put a prison in that town because it takes up the base of unemployment for all those people that are going to lose their jobs.
And fourth, we see a mounting political influence of the correctional community. And of course, number 5, the collaboration of politicians and the dominant media in the wholesale criminalization of communities of color, and particularly youth of color, and in the representation of prisons as a catch-all solution to social problems.
We need more prisons, more jails, more courts, more prosecutors. So tonight I'm requesting altogether an almost $1.5 billion increase in drug-related federal spending on law enforcement.
It is the worst mistake that people can make to think that the issue of the prison industrial complex doesn't concern them, doesn't affect them. It most certainly does. When you understand that the prison industrial complex involves the building of prisons, you're talking about labor, you're talking about contracts and construction. When you're talking about once these prisons are built, who is going to be in those prisons, you know that it affects you and should be relevant to you. When you talk about unemployment, you should realize that it affects you because a significant aspect of the prison industrial complex is the job market. Why would an employer pay someone on the street $15 an hour when they can pay somebody in jail $1 a day?
Lower your overhead and maximize your profits by combining the advantages of tax credits and cost-effective leases. Manufacturers can take advantage of a reliable, efficient workforce in numbers that are easily adjusted to marketing opportunities and are ready to meet the needs of labor-intensive manufacturing. Other employer advantages include discounted rates on workers' compensation and no required benefits package, such as retirement pay, vacation pay, sick leave, or medical insurance.
We have industries that are making money. Their profit margins are increasing. They don't have to pay sick leave. They don't have to pay vacation pay. They don't have to pay overtime. And you're required to work.
Prisoners receive slave wages, while the California prison industry is protected from federal workplace safety laws, market rates, and bankruptcy.
The 13th Amendment did not abolish slavery, it wrote slavery into the Constitution. The 13th Amendment and the Congress that passed that knew what they were doing because we can look at the debate. What they said was that slavery could only be if people were convicted of a crime. So what had to happen was the criminalization in the popular culture and in law of the African American population.
When we look at Native people and imprisonment, we're not just talking about the state or federal pen. We've been confined through this process of colonialism in forts, orphanages, reservations, jails, prisons, you name it.
Whether you're talking about indigenous peoples, people of color, poor people, women, kids, we're seeing those whole groups being criminalized and then basically being shoved away as though they've dropped from some other planet, and we're just going to warehouse them and we're still brutalize them and then presume that somehow we're going to be safe.
The more you treat people with criminal justice, the more you need to. You can see this effect on populations. You can see this in the trajectory of individual biographies. The number one predicting indicator of whether a person will go to jail in their adult life for a long time is whether or not they go to juvenile facilities.
Instead of putting us in juvenile hall over the dumbest little things, I think that they should give us a chance, at least instead of throwing us in a group home.
And I feel that imprisonment for youth is not the way to go. I think it should be like drug rehabs, behavior, all types of programs to try to rehab our youth, not imprison them.
Since 1980, California has built 21 new prisons and only 1 new state college. In the last 10 years, the budget for corrections has increased 60%, while the higher education decreased 3%. They're pumping more and more and more dollars into prisons while taking the money directly from schools.
They're making too many jails and there's not even enough people to fit in them. They should be making schools and stuff and where people can get an education and learn how to live their life.
California spends $35,000 a year to house a juvenile in the California Youth Authority, and they spend $4,000 to $5,000 per year per student.
Public schools are so horrible. There's no supplies, there's 50 kids per class, everything could be, the money from prisons could be used for everything.
They decided to destroy the public education system from the bottom to the top. Roger Freeman, for example, who was President Nixon's key education advisor and who was also Governor Ronald Reagan's key education advisor, said in 1970, quote, word for word, "We are in danger of producing an educated proletariat. We have to be selective on who we allow into higher education." And President Nixon and Vice President Agnew, who hadn't yet been convicted of his crimes, went around the country giving speeches against open admissions, they both said there were too many blacks in American colleges and universities. We had to raise the threshold. We had to be selective on who we allowed into higher education. And if this was the same period, exactly the same period, where, as they say, they understood prison as a weapon, where they began to use the prison in a massive way to destroy the educational system and much of what we had won.
When you close open admissions, that means that 80% of the graduating high school seniors of regular high schools in New York City have no chance in hell to go to college. And what they have done is that Governor Pataki for this year is trying to build another $180 million prison, because the thing is that what happens when you have kids who barely can read at a 7th grade level, can't do math, but they're still going to graduate with 90s in high school, but because they really are inadequately prepared to go to college, because now the open admissions is closed, they cannot take the SATs and pass those tests, they cannot take the ACTs, they're not qualified to attend any other type of university. You have a population that you have to prepare to institutionalize in some way or the other.
That's what most of the inner city high schools in the United States are. They are about preparing our youth for prisons.
In 1995, nationwide, states have decreased construction funds for colleges by $954 million, while increasing funds for prison construction by $926 million, almost a direct dollar for dollar out of the schools into the prisons.
They caught the last poor man on a poor man's vacation. And they cuffed him and they confiscated his stuff, and they dragged his black ass down the station and said, "Okay, the streets are safe now. All your pretty white children can come out and see Spot run." And they came out of their houses and they looked around, but they didn't see no one. My country 'tis of thee.
No society since Nazi Germany has built so many prisons in such a short period of time. Each of those prisons is a school or a hospital that'll never be built.
In the last 10 years, we've gone from investing monies in building up our schools, in building up our public housing, in building up our welfare program, to transferring those monies and placing them into the prison system. And in the process of building up the prison industrial complex, we have not only transferred resources into that complex, but we have also made it the gatekeeper to social services. So, for example, from my perspective, I see the number of mothers who are on the streets presently who are selling drugs because they're addicted to drugs and they have no access whatsoever to treatment. And for many of them, the only access and entry into treatment is actually the prison industrial complex.
And above 96th Street, they're handing out smallpox blankets so people don't freeze. The old dogs have got a new trick. It's called criminalize the symptoms while you spread the disease.
Why are people in prison? For women, most of it isn't for violent crime. It's for crimes of survival.
66% of the women who are in prison now in the state of California are there for nonviolent crimes.
All children should have some quality of life. If the mother is struggling and she cannot afford the formulas or the diapers, she will do things to provide for her children and her family. And at that point, then she's in the system.
There's no language to start talking about how these are our children, our friends, they're ourselves. Instead, it's all other and them.
It's not the same going town to town since they put everyone in jail except the Cleavers and the Bradys in my country. 'Tis a day today swings at each other on the talk show TV. Well, why don't you just go ahead, turn off the sun, 'cause we'll never live long enough to undo everything they've done to you.
If you're out of work, then it's going to lead you down to a road of crime because your family has to be taken care of somehow, and then you'll find yourself locked up in the system.
I know of a man who stole a pack of steaks because him and his mother and his brother were hungry. The value of the steaks was $5 and some cents. And he went away for 25 years to life. This man was hungry. This is a social problem.
It's cheaper to warehouse people than to take care of the social illnesses that have been created by capitalism and by imperialism.
You have the MAI and NAFTA, and you have this reality of an internationalization of capital. That capital is no longer accountable to the nations that the corporations belong to. And with that reality, what you have is an international corporate, oligarchy that basically draws labor from wherever it can get it for free and abandons domestic markets. And when they take the people here who are displaced and have no jobs, they got to put them somewhere. And that's what the prison industry is about.
Prison is fundamentally a political thing. It's about controlling these people and helping the corporate system in general reproduce itself.
Ruling classes, haves and have-nots.
The U.S. violates the most basic, the most minimum rules for the treatment of prisoners.
The Distraction Team in Pelican Bay, that is a team of officers, maybe 5 to 6 officers who will rush into your cell if you do not give up your tray, if they do not like what you're doing inside your cell, and they will remove you from your cell physically, violently. They will beat you down, handcuff you, put you in shackles for 8 hours, and they'll leave you there until the next shift releases you and laughs at you and uncuffs you. There is inmates with broken bones who sat in their cell, handcuffed, shackled for 8 hours with a broken shoulder, a broken arm, broken leg, behind the Distraction Team. That's what's going on in the prison system.
It's having a devastating effect, especially on the families, especially on our ability to organize in the communities to do the positive things that's necessary to advance civilization.
I know when I hear all this information, it just makes me mad, and I just want to get together with my overheads and just say, what can we do? What can we do to stop the tide, to make this cease?
You can help with demonstrations and public education so that more and more people can know that their tax dollars are being abused.
We cannot buy everything that's manufactured and not question where the manufacturing is coming from.
I believe that people have to get involved. They have to be aware of what's going on in prisons.
It's got to come from the grassroots. It's got to come, as the previous speakers have said, from a movement both on the inside and the outside that makes fundamental changes in our prison system.
We all got to stand it together. The struggle is not asking us what gender we are or what age we are, because the baton of the cop is not going to hit us any softer because you're 16 or because you're 60.
We have to get people doing research. We have to get people doing communication strategy. We have to get people doing grassroots organizing. We have to get together and make it more into some of our parts.
It's okay to be angry. You should be angry. After 500 years of this bullshit, you should be more than angry. But we want to teach you who to be angry with, because it ain't the blood wearing the red bandana down the street. It ain't the other guy living in the other zip code. It ain't the other guy that talks another language. It's the one corporate, greedy, capitalist system that needs to be torn down and stronger from the bottom all over again.
People are starting to recognize and realize that the agenda of this corporate elite that has basically disenfranchised the working people, not just of the world, but of this country, is an enemy that has got to be fought and recognized.
If we fight the policies of corporate capitalism only, if we fight their programs and policies only, but fail to challenge their power, we'll be forced to fight these same fights over and over and over again.
When our freedom becomes our priority over money, over a certain lifestyle, over a certain status, then we will demonstrate the importance of our freedom, and that message will be sent loud and clear to those who think they can stomp all over our freedom and do what they want to do with us. It's past time to stop being a doormat for this system, to stop allowing these people to do whatever they want to do to us. It's past time.
We will believe in freedom shall not rest until it comes. We will believe in freedom shall until it
Can't hear y'all.
comes.
What's up?
Till it comes, until it comes, until it comes.
If you didn't get to see this conference, and it's not over, because the thing is growing, believe me, and there's many numbers that are going to come on probably at the end of this video, or the captions under while you're talking to us or something like that. Take those numbers down as you're going. It's important. People's lives, and probably sometime your life or your children's lives, are going to be affected. There's 2 million people in prison in the United States, and that's going to double real soon. That's got to stop. We are not a commodity, not something that can be bought and sold. And it's a sad living inside a 5x8, believe me. There should be a better future for our children.
Over a century ago, before this vast buildup began in the punishment industry, the press asked a labor leader by the name of Samuel Gompers what labor wanted. And what did he say? He said, "We want more schoolhouses and less jails." He said, "We want more books and less arsenals, more learning and less vice, more constant work and less crime, more leisure and less greed, more justice and less revenge."